Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In this episode, number 36, we'll be sharing The Startup Way, Part 1 by Eric Ries. Let me take you back to a summer afternoon in 2012, where I found myself in a room full of engineers and executives at GE, one of America's most iconic companies. They were buzzing with excitement over their ambitious 5-year plan to develop a new diesel and natural gas engine, the Series X. This engine was meant to revolutionize industries like energy generation and transportation. But there I was, the odd one out, asking questions that sounded like they came straight out of a Dr. Seuss book. It's in a boat, on a train, by sea, by land. Why was I there? I'm not an engineer or a corporate executive. I'm an entrepreneur. GE's leadership, including CEO Jeffrey Immelt, had invited me because they were intrigued by the ideas of my first book, The Lean Startup. They wanted to see if the principles of entrepreneurial management could help GE become more adaptable and innovative. That day, we reimagined the Series X plan, realizing it could get to market much faster by starting with a simpler version of the engine. It was a light bulb moment for everyone in the room, and just the beginning of a journey that would transform how GE worked. Later that same day, I had a very different conversation with the CEO of a hypergrowth tech startup. Despite the stark differences between the two companies, one old and massive, the other young and scrappy, their challenges were strikingly similar. GE wanted to reignite its entrepreneurial spirit, while the startup wanted to maintain its innovative culture as it scaled. This realization sparked a question that has driven my work ever since. How can organizations of all sizes and types build the capabilities they need to thrive in a world of constant change? My path to that GE meeting was anything but conventional. I started out as a software engineer and a basement-dwelling tech entrepreneur during the dot-com bubble. My first ventures were failures, and my first book, The Black Art of Java Game Programming, is now a 99-cent relic on Amazon. But through these experiences, I began to notice patterns in what made startups succeed or fail. I started writing about these insights in 2008, and in 2011, I published The Lean Startup. To my surprise, the book resonated far beyond the tech world, sparking a global movement and proving that entrepreneurial principles could be applied in almost any context. In The Lean Startup, I argued that a startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. This broad definition means that anyone, whether they're in a tiny startup, massive corporation, or even a government agency, can be an entrepreneur if they're working to solve uncertain problems. Over the years, I've seen this idea validated in every kind of organization imaginable, from nonprofits to Fortune 500 companies. This brings us back to GE. My work with them led to creation of FastWorks, a program that trained thousands of GE engineers in entrepreneurial methods. It was a massive cultural shift, proving that even the largest, most traditional companies could embrace innovation. But I realized startups need this kind of transformation too. Many founders I worked with had embraced the flashy parts of the lean startup, like minimum viable products and pivots, but struggled with the less glamorous aspects like management and accountability. As their companies grew, they faced the same bureaucratic challenges they once despised in big corporations. This paradox fascinated me. Why do startups, which are born to disrupt, often end up becoming the very thing they set out to challenge? And how can both startups and established companies build systems that foster continuous innovation and long-term growth? These questions led me to develop a new framework, which I call the Startup Way. These are the 5 principles of the Startup Way. At its core, the Startup Way is about combining the rigor of traditional management with the agility of startups. It's a system for continuous innovation that can work in any organization, regardless of size or industry. Here are its 5 key principles. 1. Continuous innovation. Long-term growth isn't about one big breakthrough. It's about creating a system that generates new ideas and new products repeatedly. 2. Startup as the atomic unit of work. To innovate, companies need small, agile teams, internal startups that can experiment and iterate quickly. 3. The missing function. Most organizations lack a core discipline of entrepreneurship, which is as essential as marketing or finance. 4. The second founding. Transforming an organization to embrace entrepreneurial principles is like founding it all over again, no matter how old or large it is. And 5. Continuous transformation. Organizations must develop the capability to reinvent themselves repeatedly in response to new challenges. This book isn't just another manifesto urging you to be more innovative. It's a practical guide filled with proven techniques to help leaders transform their organizations. Whether you're running a startup or managing a team in a large company, you'll learn how to build accountability structures that encourage productive innovation, create a culture that balances the needs of your core business with new growth opportunities, empower employees to think and act like entrepreneurs, and navigate the conflicts that arise between new processes and legacy systems. This book is divided into 3 parts. 1. The modern company. Why traditional management practices are failing and what new capabilities organizations need to succeed. 2. A roadmap for transformation. Step-by-step guidance on how to implement the startup way in your organization, including real-world examples from companies like GE. And 3. The big picture. How continuous transformation can help organizations thrive in the long term and even address broader social challenges. Ultimately, the startup way is about creating a new type of organization, one that can adapt, innovate, and grow sustainably in a world of constant change. It's about moving beyond the short-term pressures of quarterly results to build something that lasts. Whether you're a startup founder, a corporate executive, or a team leader, this book will give you the tools to create a legacy of meaningful, lasting impact. So let's get started. Together we'll explore how to transform the way modern companies operate and unlock the full potential of entrepreneurial management. Part 1. The Modern Company. Chapter 1. Respect the past, invent the future, creating the modern company. Let's start with a simple but powerful question. What makes a company truly modern? This is something I discussed with Jeff Immelt, the former CEO of GE, during one of our early conversations. He said something that stuck with me. Nobody wants to work at an old-fashioned company. Nobody wants to buy products from an old-fashioned company. And nobody wants to invest in an old-fashioned company. This statement became the foundation for this chapter and, in many ways, for this book. Modern company is one that can harness the creativity and talent of every employee, no matter their role or level. Imagine if a random employee at your company had a brilliant idea that could unlock massive growth. Would your company have the systems in place to test that idea, evaluate its potential, and scale it if it worked? If the answer is no, then your company isn't modern yet. Today's business environment is vastly different from the one that shaped traditional management practices. Companies face unprecedented uncertainty, driven by factors like globalization, rapid technological change, and the rise of disruptive startups. Managers are under pressure not only to navigate this uncertainty, but also to create it by launching innovative products and entering new markets. The pace of technological adoption is accelerating. For example, it took decades for electricity to reach 25% of U.S. households, but the Internet achieved the same milestone in just 7 years. This shift has fundamentally changed the rules of competition. In the past, companies competed on price, quality, and distribution. Today, they compete on design, brand, business model, and technology platforms. Why traditional management tools fall short? Traditional management practices, like those pioneered by Alfred Sloan at General Motors, were revolutionary in their time. Sloan's system of forecasting and accountability helped GM avoid costly mistakes and became the foundation of 20th century management. But here's the problem. Those systems were designed for a world where forecasts could actually come true. In today's world, where uncertainty is the norm, those same tools often fail. Startups, for example, can't rely on accurate forecasts because they're operating in uncharted territory. Yet many companies still cling to these outdated tools, using them to hold teams accountable, even when the underlying assumptions are pure guesswork. This creates a dangerous dynamic. When teams fail to meet their forecasts, it's often unclear whether the failure was due to poor execution or unrealistic expectations. Without better tools for managing uncertainty, companies risk punishing the wrong behaviors and stifling innovation. So let's talk about failure. In traditional management, failure is something to be avoided at all costs. Think of GE's Six Sigma program, which aimed to eliminate defects and achieve near-perfect quality. While this approach works well for established processes, it's ill-suited for innovation where failure is inevitable and often necessary. In the startup world, failure is seen differently. It's not just tolerated, it's embraced as a learning opportunity. As I like to say, I eat failure for breakfast. This mindset is critical for navigating uncertainty and driving innovation. Take Amazon, for example. When their Fire Phone flopped, they didn't shut down the team responsible or abandon their efforts in hardware. Instead, they used the experience to learn and pivot, leading to the development of successful products like the Echo and Alexa. Jeff Bezos summed it up perfectly. I've made billions of dollars on failures on Amazon. None of these things are fun, but they also don't matter. What matters is that companies that don't continue to experiment or embrace failure eventually get in the position where the only thing they can do is make a Hail Mary bet at the end of their corporate existence. Even startups which are born out of innovation can fall into the trap of traditional management as they grow. Dropbox is a great example. Despite its early success, the company struggled with launches of new products like Mailbox and Carousel, which failed to get traction. Why? Because they didn't gather enough user feedback and fell into the trap of building without listening. But here's the difference. Dropbox learned from these failures. They made changes to their processes and launched Dropbox Paper, a new product that incorporated the lessons they'd learned. This ability to adapt and improve is what sets modern companies apart. Role of leadership. Leaders play a crucial role in fostering a culture of innovation. I once spoke with the founder of a unicorn startup who was frustrated by her team's lack of progress on a new project. The problem wasn't the team's lack of effort, it was the lack of a system to hold them accountable in a way that genuinely measured progress. The founder had to shift her perspective. Instead of seeing herself as the scrappy entrepreneur, she needed to think like an investor in the entrepreneurs within her company. Her role was to create conditions for them to succeed with clear milestones and accountability mechanisms. So what does a modern company look like? Here's a quick comparison. Old-fashioned companies rely on rigid hierarchies, siloed teams, and long-term projects with high stakes. They prioritize efficiency and avoid failure at all costs. Modern companies embrace cross-functional teams, rapid experimentation, and a culture that rewards learning from failure. They focus on long-term impact rather than the short-term results. A modern company is one where every employee has the opportunity to act like an entrepreneur. It combines the discipline of traditional management with the agility of entrepreneurial thinking. Even companies as advanced as Toyota have recognized the need for a new system. When I met with Toyota executives, they told me that while their production system was world-class, they lacked a corresponding system for discovering what to produce in the first place. This is the missing half of modern management, a system for navigating uncertainty and driving continuous innovation. Ultimately, the goal is to create a synthesis of the best of both worlds, the reliability and discipline of traditional management, combined with the creativity and adaptability of entrepreneurial thinking. This is what it means to be a truly modern company. In the next chapters, we'll dive deeper into how to build this kind of an organization, exploring the tools, processes, and mindsets that make it possible. Chapter 2, Entrepreneurship, the Missing Function. Let's start with a thought experiment. Imagine a time before marketing was a recognized discipline. There were no CMOs, no product marketing managers, no one whose sole job it was to focus on advertising, branding, or customer engagement. Back then, marketing was everyone's responsibility, which in reality meant it was no one's responsibility. It wasn't until marketing became a formalized function with dedicated roles and expertise that companies began to excel in this area. Now let's apply that same lens to entrepreneurship. Who in your organization is responsible for grappling with uncertainty, unlocking new growth opportunities, and translating innovative ideas into viable products? In most companies, the answer is no one, or worse, it's everyone's responsibility, which, as we've seen, often means it's no one's priority. This is the gap we need to address. Entrepreneurship must become a core function of the modern company, just like marketing, finance, or engineering. It's not about creating new products. It's about embedding a startup mindset into the organization, empowering employees to experiment, and building systems to support innovation at every level. The entrepreneurial function. When I meet with CEOs, I often ask two questions. One, who's responsible for overseeing high-potential growth initiatives that could become new divisions of the company? And 2, who is responsible for infusing the organization with an entrepreneurial experimental mindset? The answer is almost always the same: no one. At best, these responsibilities are tacked onto the job descriptions of existing managers in engineering or marketing or IT. But no one wakes up every day with the sole mission of fostering entrepreneurship across the organization. That's why we need a dedicated entrepreneurial function. Its role is to preserve and nurture the company's startup DNA, ensuring that innovation isn't just a one-off effort, but a continuous process. Just as finance sets the standards for budgeting and resource allocation, entrepreneurship should set the standards for experimentation, innovation, and growth. Startups as the atomic unit of work. The first responsibility of the entrepreneurial function is to oversee internal startups. These are not typical product teams. They're small, agile, and designed to operate in conditions of extreme uncertainty. Internal startups blend the scientific rigor of R&D, the customer focus of marketing, and the process discipline of engineering. But here's the challenge. Startups don't fit neatly into traditional org charts. They require a distinct career path with their own metrics for success, mentorship programs, and performance standards. Silicon Valley has figured this out, but most companies haven't. Managing success, the hard part. Ironically, the biggest challenge for internal startups isn't failure, it's success. When a startup within a company starts to gain traction, it often threatens the status quo. Middle managers who may have tolerated the experiment in its early stages suddenly see it as a threat to their existing operations. This is why the entrepreneurial function must have a plan for what happens when a startup succeeds. Will it be absorbed into an existing division? Will it become a new division? Who makes that decision? Without clear answers to these questions, successful startups can be stifled or even sabotaged by the very organization that created them. The flow of ideas in a modern company. Every part of a modern company operates on a spectrum between experimentation and execution. Startups are at one end, focused on testing new ideas. Mature divisions are at the other, focused on scaling and optimizing existing products. But even the most established teams need to experiment occasionally, and even the scrappiest startups need to execute. This is why entrepreneurial management can't exist in isolation. It must be integrated into the broader organization, creating a flow of ideas that moves seamlessly between experimentation and execution. A new leadership style. Let's be honest, entrepreneurs aren't the easiest people to manage. They're often seen as rule breakers, troublemakers, renegades, but the best entrepreneurs are disciplined, resourceful, and laser-focused on serving the customer. Traditional management tools, which are designed for planning and forecasting, don't work well for entrepreneurs. We need new tools to identify, support, and develop entrepreneurial talent within these organizations. It's tempting to think of internal startups as being solely about creating new products. But entrepreneurship can and should be applied to every function within a company. For example, HR can experiment with new ways to recruit and retain talent. Finance can develop innovative funding models for high-risk projects. IT can prototype new tools to improve productivity. In fact, some of the most impactful innovations come from unexpected places. That's why the entrepreneurial function must be woven into the fabric of the organization, supporting every team and every function. Here's a surprising truth. Entrepreneurship isn't just for entrepreneurs. Over time, I've come to realize that the tools and techniques of entrepreneurship can benefit everyone in an organization. For example, I've heard countless stories of employees using lean startup principles to improve seemingly minor projects, like creating a PowerPoint presentation or streamlining a workflow. These small experiments can have a big impact, and they demonstrate that entrepreneurial thinking is a skill anyone can learn and apply. The underground network. Every company has a hidden network of entrepreneurial employees, people who are willing to take risks, challenge the status quo, and fight for their ideas. These are the employees managers call when they need someone to tackle a high-risk, high-reward project. At GE, for example, Corey Nelson led the first FastWorks project, the Series X engine. He didn't wait for permission or a roadmap, he just dove in and made it happen. Similarly, Michael Mahan, product manager in GE's appliance division, was known for his ability to push boundaries and experiment with new ideas. These crazy kids in the corner, as Mahan called his team, are the lifeblood of innovation. But too often they're marginalized or forced to operate without support. The entrepreneurial function can change that by giving these employees the tools, resources, and recognition they need to thrive. The missing organizational capabilities. To support entrepreneurship, companies need to develop new capabilities, including 1. Creating space for experiments. Teams need islands of freedom where they can test ideas without fear of failure. 2. Funded projects without guaranteed ROI. Breakthrough ideas often look like bad ideas at first. Companies must learn to invest based on evidence and experimentation, not just forecasts. 3. Defining new milestones. Traditional metrics don't work for startups. We need new ways to measure progress and success. 4. Providing mentorship and coaching. Entrepreneurs need guidance just like any other employee. 5. Building networks and communities. Corporate entrepreneurs need support systems just like their counterparts in Silicon Valley. 6. Matching the right people to the right projects. High-risk projects need passionate entrepreneurial leaders, not just whoever happens to be available. And 7. Creating new incentive systems. Companies must reward employees for taking smart risks and learning from failure. Every company has untapped entrepreneurial talent. The challenge is to create an environment where these employees can thrive. By adding entrepreneurship as a core function, companies can systematize experimentation, support innovation, and unlock new sources of growth. In the next chapter, we'll explore how Silicon Valley has built systems to support entrepreneurship and what other organizations can learn from it. Chapter 3, A Startup State of Mind. Let's talk about what makes startups tick. At their core, startups operate with a unique mindset, a blend of risk-taking, rapid growth, and relentless experimentation. This startup state of mind isn't just about Silicon Valley. It's about a set of beliefs and practices that have spread to startup hubs worldwide. So what are these universal principles, and how can they be applied to other organizations? It's all about the team. In Silicon Valley, the team is everything. Investors don't just look for good ideas or solid business plans. They look for the right people. Why? Because business ideas and strategies often change, but a strong team can adapt, pivot, and execute. I've experienced this firsthand. When I was raising money for IMVU, our revenue was small, but we had a hockey stick growth pattern. What impressed investors wasn't the numbers, it was how we thought and acted. We demonstrated fast decision-making, scientific rigor, and resourcefulness. That's what investors bet on. The team's ability to navigate uncertainty and find success. Small teams beat big teams. Here's a cherished belief in the startup world. Small teams are more powerful than big ones. In traditional organizations, the size of a team often reflects the importance of a project, but in startups, small dedicated teams can achieve the impossible. Why? Small teams are adaptable, focused, and free from bureaucracy. They communicate closely, hold each other accountable, and move quickly. Scarcity also plays a role. Limited resources force teams to focus on what truly matters. Take Google, for example. Even for massive projects like Google Web Search, they strive to keep their teams as small as possible. This approach ensures that every team member carries significant responsibility and remains deeply connected to the mission. What about cross-functional teams? Startups are inherently cross-functional. Even if a team starts with just engineers, they quickly face challenges in marketing, customer acquisition, and finance. In many cases, team members have to wear multiple hats and solve problems outside of their expertise. The cross-functional approach is why startups are so effective. They bring together diverse perspectives to tackle problems holistically. Whether it's a product designer working with a salesperson or an engineer collaborating with a marketer, the goal is always the same: solve the customer's problem. Start with the customer. Speaking of customers, startups always begin with them in mind. I've worked with teams in traditional companies that didn't even know what problem they were solving for their customers. One team, for example, wanted to enter a commodity market simply because their company lacked market share. But customers don't care about your market share. They care about how you can make their lives better. Amazon has a great method for keeping the customer front and center. They use a process called working backward, which starts with writing a press release for the product. This press release outlines the problem, current solutions, and how the new product will solve the problem better. If the team can't articulate the customer's problem clearly, they don't move forward. Startups are often for profit, but their financial structure is unique. Employees are typically offered equity, which aligns their incentives with the company's long-term success. Equity isn't just a bonus, it's a way to financialize learning and reward risk-taking. This structure also encourages investment and growth. Unlike small business owners who might hesitate to reinvest profits, startup employees and founders are motivated to take risks and pursue big opportunities. Startups thrive by focusing on leading indicators, metrics that predict future success, rather than trailing indicators like revenue or market share. For example, customer engagement, satisfaction, and conversion rates are often better predictors of long-term growth. I've seen this play out in my own work. At one startup, we celebrated growing customer numbers, but our conversion rates stayed flat. It wasn't until we analyzed our metrics that we realized our product wasn't improving customer behavior. This focus on leading indicators saved us from disaster. Metered funding. In Silicon Valley, startups use a system called metered funding. Instead of receiving a massive budget up front, teams raise small amounts of money in stages. This approach limits risks while giving teams the freedom to innovate. For example, a seed stage startup might raise a few $100,000. The team can spend it however they like, but if they don't show progress, they won't get more funding. This system creates accountability without stifling creativity. Startups believe in meritocracy, the idea that good ideas can come from anywhere. While Silicon Valley isn't perfect in this regard, implicit biases still exist, the culture values results over pedigree. Take Mark Zuckerberg, for example. When he pitched Facebook, he wasn't particularly articulate about his vision, but investors saw his early results and took a chance on him. Similarly, at Intuit, an administrative assistant came up with the idea for TurboTax training wheels, which grew into a massive program. Meritocracy isn't about perfection. It's about creating opportunities for anyone with a good idea to succeed. Startups are built on experimentation. They create systems that allow teams to test ideas without risking financial ruin. This culture of trust and transparency encourages teams to learn from failure and double down on what works. For example, many startups maintain real-time metrics dashboards that are visible to anyone. This transparency keeps teams aligned and focused on results, not politics. Mission and vision. Startups are mission-driven. As Mark Zuckerberg famously said, "We don't build services to make money. We make money to build better services." The focus on vision motivates teams, attracts top talent, and provides a guiding light for decision-making. Vision is also what allows startups to pivot. Pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision. It's the vision that keeps teams grounded while they experiment and adapt. Entrepreneurship as a career path. Finally, startups offer a unique career path. Early employees gain responsibilities quickly, developing skills that sets them apart as entrepreneurial leaders. This founder mentality is highly valued in Silicon Valley, where employees often go on to start their own companies or become investors. Entrepreneurship is not a linear path. It's a web of relationships, trust, and reputation. As more people are given the opportunity to try their hand at entrepreneurship, the world will continue to change in profound ways. Wrapping this up, the startup state of mind isn't just for Silicon Valley. It's a set of principles that any organization can adopt. By focusing on small teams, customer centricity, experimentation, and vision, companies can unlock new sources of growth and innovation. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the tools and methods of the lean startup, exploring how these principles can be applied in practice. Building. Chapter 4. Lessons from the Lean Startup. Let's talk about the Lean Startup. This is his first book. It's not just a buzzword for trendy methodology. It's a framework that helps startups, whether internal or external, figure out what to do, how to do it, and how to measure progress. Lean Startup is about finding the fastest path to realizing a vision through experimentation, learning, and iteration. In this chapter, we'll explore its core principles, tools, and real-world examples that show how it works in action. How the Lean Startup works. The Lean Startup method is built on 5 key steps. Identify leap of faith assumptions, LOFAs as he calls them, LOFAS. Identify leap of faith assumptions. These are the beliefs that must be true for the startup to succeed. Create a minimum viable product, MVP. Build the simplest version of the product to test those assumptions quickly and inexpensively. 3. Validated learning. Treat each experiment as an opportunity to learn what works and what doesn't. 4. Build, measure, learn, feedback loop. Use the learning from each experiment to iterate and improve. And 5. Pivot or persevere. regularly decide whether to change strategy, pivot, or stay the course, persevere. The goal is to systematically break down a vision into smaller testable components and use the scientific method to validate or invalidate assumptions. The Lean Startup in Action, the College Scorecard. A great example of the Lean Startup in Action is the College Scorecard project led by Lisa Galabter at the U.S. Department of Education. The goal was to create a tool to help students and parents make informed decisions about colleges based on metrics like affordability, graduation rates, and post-graduation earnings. Initially, the team was overwhelmed by the number of possible features and approaches, so they paused and asked, what problem are we trying to solve? They realized their mission was to change the conversation about what makes a good school and empower consumers to make better choices. To test their assumptions, they went straight to their customers, students, parents, and guidance counselors. They conducted interviews on the Washington Mall, asking simple questions about the college application process. Instead of building expensive software, they created cardboard prototypes of their app and observed how people interacted with them. This approach revealed surprising insights. For example, they assumed users would want a feature to compare colleges side by side, but no one showed interest in it. By iterating on their prototypes, they refined the tool and eventually built a product that met real customer needs. So, let's go into detail on the key tools and processes. 1. The leap of faith assumptions, LOFAs. Every startup operates under assumptions about what customers want, how they'll behave, and what solutions will work. The Lean Startup emphasizes making these assumptions explicit and testing them early. For example, for the College Scorecard team, they assumed users would want to compare the colleges, and by testing this assumption with a prototype, they discovered it wasn't true. Instead of relying on surveys or focus groups, which are often wrong, they observed real customer behavior to uncover revealed preferences. 2. Minimum Viable Product, MVP. An MVP is a simple early version of a product designed to test assumptions and gather validated learning. The goal is to maximize learning while minimizing cost, time, and effort. The College Scorecard's cardboard prototypes are a perfect example of an MVP. They allowed the team to test features and gather feedback without building a full-fledged app. MVPs come in many forms, from simple mock-ups to functional prototypes. The key is to focus on learning, not perfection. As David Bland, a lean startup expert, puts it, MVPs are optimized for learning, not for scaling. 3. Validated learning. Validated learning is the process of understanding what customers actually want through real-world experiments. It's about measuring customer behavior, not just collecting opinions. For example, I once spent 6 months building a piece of software that no one wanted. A simple web page could have revealed the same insights in a single day. This is the power of validated learning. It saves time and resources by focusing on what truly matters. 4. Build, measure, learn, feedback loop. The build, measure, learn loop is the engine of the lean startup. After building an MVP, you measure its performance, analyze the results, and use the insights to iterate. The College Scorecard team used this loop to refine their tool. They tested features, gathered feedback, and made improvements based on what they learned. This iterative process allowed them to create a product that truly resonated with users. And 5, pivot or persevere. At regular intervals, teams must decide whether to pivot, change strategy, or persevere, stay the course. A pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision. For example, Netflix pivoted from mailing DVDs to streaming, and PayPal shifted from a Palm Pilot money transfer service to a web-based platform. These pivots allowed them to adapt to changing circumstances while staying true to their vision. Real-world examples. Twilio's Build, Measure, Learn loop. Twilio, a cloud communications platform, uses the lean startup method to identify opportunities and test ideas. Teams start by writing a press release and FAQ for a potential product, then they gather customer feedback before building anything. This approach helps them validate ideas quickly and iterate based on real customer needs. GE's Flash Liquid Expander, FLE. GE's Turbo Machinery Solutions team used lean startup principles to test a new product idea. They created the presentation as their MVP and tested it with customers. When they discovered the market wasn't large enough, they pivoted and eventually decided to kill the project. This saved the company millions of dollars and years of efforts. Lean Startup for Leaders. Leaders play a crucial role in fostering a lean startup culture. Instead of demanding results or punishing failure, they should ask two key questions. What did you learn? How do you know? By focusing on learning and experimentation, leaders can create an environment where teams feel empowered to innovate and adapt. Just read those two questions again. Number 1, what did you learn? 2, how do you know? One executive I worked with applied this mindset during a sales review. Instead of reprimanding a regional manager for missing targets, he asked what they learned and how they could improve. This shift in approach led to better insights and a more effective strategy. The lean startup isn't just a methodology, it's a mindset. It's about embracing uncertainty, testing assumptions, and learning as quickly as possible. Whether you're building a new product, launching a startup, or leading a team, these principles can help you navigate complexity and drive innovation. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to apply these tools and methods to create a culture of continuous innovation. Chapter 5, A Management System for Innovation at Scale. Let's take you on a journey to a manufacturing plant in America's Rust Belt. This factory, which has been producing household appliances for decades, was undergoing a lean transformation. They were making great strides in eliminating waste and improving quality. But as I walked the factory floor, marveling at the craftsmanship involved in wiring thousands of buttons on appliances, I couldn't help but ask, how many of these buttons are ever actually used by customers? The answer? No one knew. And yet the data existed. Service technicians could download usage data, and many appliances were connected to the internet. The problem wasn't a lack of information, it was that no one had looked at it. Why? Because deep down, they knew the truth might be depressing. Countless hours of skilled labor were being wasted on buttons no one pressed. This isn't just a story about buttons. It's a story about how traditional management systems failed to address waste and inefficiency at scale. Every function in the value chain, factory workers, product managers, sales teams, even category buyers, was doing its job. Yet no one was accountable for asking the most important question: what do customers actually want? This is the kind of systemic waste that plagues organizations everywhere, and it's why we need a new management system for innovation at scale. The problem with traditional systems. Established companies and startups face opposite challenges. Large organizations are often bogged down by rigid structures and protocols that stifle innovation. On the other hand, startups struggle to scale without losing the agility and creativity that made them successful in the first place. The solution isn't to adopt one system or the other. It's to combine the best of both. This is where entrepreneurial management comes in. It's a framework designed for the uncertainty of the 21st century, blending the rigor of traditional management, the flexibility of startup principles. The foundation of the startup way. The startup way is built on 4 interconnected elements. 1. Accountability. What are employees rewarded, promoted, or fired for? Accountability systems must align with the company's long-term and short-term goals. For example, if failure is punished, teams won't experiment or innovate. 2. Process. The tools and tactics employees use to get work done. Process flow from accountability. If the system rewards experimentation, teams will adopt processes that support rapid iteration. Culture. Shared beliefs and habits that shape how employees think and act. Culture isn't created by slogans or posters, it's the residue of past accountability and process choices. And 4. People, the ultimate resource. A toxic culture repels talent, while an innovative culture attracts it and retains it. These elements are interconnected. For example, a culture of innovation can't exist without processes that support experimentation. And those processes won't take root without accountability systems that reward learning. A new organizational form. To foster innovation, companies need to create a dedicated entrepreneurial function. This function operates alongside traditional departments like engineering, marketing, and finance, but focuses specifically on projects that require innovation or operate in uncertain contexts. This isn't about adding a new box to the org chart. It's about fundamentally rethinking how the organization operates. It's hard work, but the benefits are worth it. The outcomes of transformation. There are 5 of them here. The 5 outcomes of transformation. 1. More leadership opportunities. Internal startups provide employees with real opportunities to lead, even on small projects. This allows companies to identify and nurture future leaders. 2. Retaining innovative talent. When talented employees leave to start their own companies, it's often because they feel stifled by bureaucracy. By creating an entrepreneurial function, companies can keep these employees and their ideas in-house. 3. Reducing waste. Traditional management systems often lead to wasted time and energy. For example, workers wiring buttons that no one uses. The startup way focuses on building the right things in the first place. 4. Better project accountability. In traditional systems, projects often limp along as zombies because no one wants to take responsibility for killing them. In the startup way, project founders are accountable for their success or failure, creating a culture of learning and responsibility. And 5. Solving problems with agility. The startup way allows companies to tackle problems of all sizes, whether it's a massive product recall or a small inefficiency like unused buttons, by running experiments and scaling successful solutions. Real-world examples. The microwave button problem. Imagine a company using the startup way to address the issue of unused microwave buttons. A small cross-functional two-pizza team could be tasked with solving the problem. They'd build minimum viable products, MVPs, and test them with customers, gathering data on what features actually drive sales. One of my clients did exactly this, taking MVPs to local retailers and measuring customer interest. The results either validated the current approach or revealed opportunities for improvement. Either way, the team gained valuable insights without wasting resources. In the biotech industry, experiments can take years and cost millions of dollars. Emerald Cloud Lab, ECL, is changing that by automating lab processes. Researchers submit experiments online, and ECL's platform carries them out, generating data in days instead of months. This approach not only saves time and money, but also allows the industry to scale its knowledge exponentially. The startup way isn't just about solving small problems. It's about creating a system for continuous innovation. For example, Intuit's lean startup transformation didn't just improve their products, it convinced investors that their growth was sustainable. By focusing on customer-centric metrics and building a culture of experimentation, Intuit proved that innovation isn't a fluke, it's a process. So, to wrap this up, the startup way offers a path to a more innovative, agile, and customer-focused organization. It's not easy, but it requires rethinking accountability, processes, culture, and even the org chart. But the rewards are immense: better products, happier employees, and sustainable growth. In the next section, we'll explore how to implement this transformation and embed the startup way into the fabric of your organization. Part 2, Chapter 6. A Roadmap for Transformation. Who is talking, and what are we talking about? Let me tell you a story about transformation, one that begins with chaos and ends with a roadmap for change. This chapter dives into the nitty-gritty of how organizations, even the most bureaucratic and resistant to change, can embrace a new way of working. And to kick things off, let's talk about healthcare.gov. When the Affordable Care Act launched in 2013, its online marketplace, healthcare.gov, was a disaster. Built over 3 years with $800 million and 55 contractors, the site crashed on day one. By the end of the second day, only 248 people had successfully signed up for insurance. It was a public failure of epic proportions, threatening to derail a cornerstone of President Obama's legacy. Enter Mikey Dickerson, a Google site reliability engineer who had worked on Obama's 2012 campaign. One early morning, he found himself on a mysterious conference call with Todd Park, the U.S. Chief Technology Officer, and a group of technologists. Before he knew it, he was on a plane to Washington, D.C., joining a small team tasked with fixing the site. What Dickerson and his team discovered was that the problem wasn't just technical, it was systemic. Contractors were working in silos, the architecture was fragile, and there was no accountability. The team implemented a new approach: small cross-functional teams, rapid iteration, and a culture of transparency. Dickerson even posted 3 rules on the war room door: focus on problem solving, let the most knowledgeable people speak, not the highest ranking, and prioritize urgent issues. The results were remarkable. Within 2 months, the site could handle 50,000 users at a time. Uptime improved from 43% to 95%, and over 400 bugs were fixed. The turnaround wasn't just about technology. It was about a cultural shift that brought together government workers, contractors, and technologists in a new way. The bigger picture: transformation in 3 phases. The healthcare.gov story is just one example of how organizations can transform. this chapter outlines a roadmap for change broken into 3 phases. Phase 1, laying the foundation. This is all about experimentation and building a critical mass of success stories. It's about proving that a new way of working is not only viable but preferable. For example, in the government, early efforts like the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program brought in outside technologists to work alongside civil servants, creating small wins that paved the way for larger changes. Phase 2, scaling and deployment. Once the foundation is set, the organization must scale the transformation. This is where resistance emerges, and the change either gains momentum or dies. For healthcare.gov, this phase involved creating the U.S. Digital Service to institutionalize the new approach. Phase 3, deep systems change. The final phase tackles the entrenched systems and structures that perpetuate old ways of working. At this stage, the organization has the power to make lasting changes, like GE's FastWorks program, which redefined how the company approached innovation. Lessons from GE, the Series X engine. Let's shift gears to another transformation story, this time at GE. In 2012, I was invited to speak to GE's top executives about the lean startup. The company was grappling with the question, why does it take 5 years to develop a new engine? The Series X engine project became a test case for a new way of working. During a workshop, I asked the team to challenge their assumptions. Why did the engine need to serve 5 different use cases? Could they build a simpler version for just one use case? By focusing on a single application, the team cut the development timeline from 5 years to 1. They even discovered they could modify an existing engine to create a minimum viable product in just 6 months. This approach, starting small, testing assumptions, and iterating, became the foundation of GE's FastWorks program. Over time, the company scaled the program across its businesses, proving that the lean startup method could work in even the most complex environments. Key takeaways for transformation. This chapter offers a practical guide for organizations looking to embrace a more entrepreneurial way of working. Here are some key lessons. 1. Start small. Begin with a few pilot projects to build a critical mass of success stories. At GE, the Series X engine was just the beginning. The company eventually applied the FastWorks methodology to everything from refrigerators to neonatal incubators. 2. Build cross-functional teams. Transformation requires collaboration across disciplines. For example, GE teams included engineers, marketers, and even legal experts to ensure all perspectives were considered. 3. Create a culture of experimentation. Encourage teams to test assumptions and learn from failures. At Toyota, a team used Craigslist ads to gather customer feedback for a connected car project, leading to the development of a new mobility platform. 4. Measure success differently. Traditional metrics like ROI don't always apply to innovation. Instead, focus on leading indicators like cycle time, customer engagement, and team morale. 5. Empower change agents. Transformation requires dedicated leaders who can navigate resistance and drive change. At GE, leaders like Janice Semper and Viv Goldstein played a critical role in scaling FastWorks. And 6. Translate the process. Every organization is unique, so the transformation process must be adapted to fit its culture. At GE, the company developed its own language and tools, like the GE beliefs, to embed the new way of working. Transformation is hard, but it's possible, even in the most bureaucratic organizations. Whether it's rescuing healthcare.gov or rethinking how GE builds engines, the key is to start small, experiment, and build momentum. As you read the next chapters, you'll learn more about how to move through each phase of transformation and tackle the challenges that arise along the way. This has been part 1 of The Startup Way by Eric Ries. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you'd love to learn more, there are tons of examples in the book. Pick up a copy of the book, The Startup Way by Eric Ries. That's where we'll leave it. Thanks for joining. That's a wrap.